This is the White Coat Investor Podcast, Milestones to Millionaire, celebrating stories of success along the journey to financial freedom. Here is your host, Dr. Jim Dolly.
This is Milestones to Millionaire, podcast number 34, PSLF forgiveness and millionaires. Today's episode is sponsored by Set for Life Insurance, founded by its president, Jamie Fleischner, in 1993 while attending Washington University in St. Louis. Since then, they've helped thousands of physicians and professionals with their term life and disability insurance needs. As independent brokers, they work on your behalf to shop around to find the most suitable products at the most cost-effective rate. Their significant expertise and down-to-earth style help you move through the process smoothly without any pressure. Because of their volume and exceptional reputation and the relationships they've developed over the years, they have access to special services not available elsewhere in the industry, including special discounts, priority underwriting handling on some occasions, exceptions in the underwriting process. So if you need term life or disability insurance, visit setforlifeinsurance.com today. It will help you get set for life. All right, we've got a great interview today. You know, a lot of times we just talk about one milestone people have hit, but it seems like last week and this week, we've got people that are hitting multiple milestones at about the same time. So we're going to talk about both of them today. Let's get Doctors Glazier on the phone. All right, today on the podcast, we have Dr. Glazier. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Jim. This is pretty cool. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so you are an emergency physician, is that right? And
Yep.
Your wife is a plastic surgeon?
Yeah, she did general surgery for 7 years in residency and then realized she wanted to change careers. So did fellowship for 3 years and now is an attending.
Wow. Okay, so we're talking about multiple accomplishments you guys have done today. Let's start with the student loans. Tell us about your student loan journey, what you guys owed and how you paid for school and what you've done to get rid of them.
So fortunately for me, I didn't have any student loans, but my wife did. She had about 190,000 in federal loans and then 50,000 in BU private loans. And so fortunately, while she was in residency, they were interest free. So it was the same amount of money the whole time. And so since she was going to be a lifelong resident, we decided to do PSLF. And then by the time she finished, that was during the pandemic when they were holding payments. So she never really had to make any payments as an attending. And so once she got the 120 payments,
Wow.
then she was able to apply for it. And we got it pretty quickly.
Well, this is pretty similar to somebody we had on a couple of weeks ago who spent 8 or 9 years in residency and fellowship and then came out during the pandemic and ended up, I think, paying $60,000 toward $240,000 or paid $60,000, ended up getting $240,000 forgiven. Do you recall how much you guys paid total toward her federal loans and how much was forgiven?
So she came out with about 178,000 of federal loans and had to make small payments, about 180 in the beginning, and then fellowship it was 300 per month. So I think she paid about 20 or 30,000 towards the loans, and then I think the rest was forgiven.
Which was probably at that point, what, 210, 220, 230, something like that?
Yeah, yep, you got it. And then the 50,000, what we did was we just saved up a little bit each month in a couple years, and then once she was attending, we had the cash, so we just paid it off pretty quickly.
The private loans.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So did you guys run into any problems getting public service loan forgiveness? A lot of people have had some hassle getting it. What kind of issues did you guys have, if any?
Getting the loans forgiven once we had the payments was no problem whatsoever. The paperwork was very quick and easy. And then she submitted, and then 2 weeks later, we got them forgiven. I actually didn't believe her at first because it happened so quickly. But
Huh.
the counts were off pretty often during the whole process. When she switched from one provider to another and then to Fed loans, either the counts didn't go through or her programs had to keep resubmitting paperwork because they were getting lost. And so pretty much every year something came up, but because she was diligent and kept having them submit the paperwork and doing everything over and over again, by the time we were ready to submit, our counts were good and we were ready to go. But I do have a couple friends whose counts are still off, and I think that was the biggest issue that we had.
Any tips to help the process go smoothly for others?
Just as you're going through it, just being diligent, making sure that the counts are there, just so that when you're ready to get the forgiveness, you don't have to go back and try to figure out where the accounts were lost. You have to resubmit paperwork from one program to another. She did residency, but she also did research in a different facility. So that facility had to submit paperwork, and then fellowship was different. So she had multiple coordinators that she had to be communicating with. And just by making sure the process was going smoothly during the time, she didn't have to really have any issues when we were ready to submit the paperwork.
All right. Well, let's turn the page a little bit. Getting those loans forgiven gave you a significant boost to your net worth, and you've hit a net worth milestone. What's your approximate net worth at this point?
Yeah, so we are now $1.1 million as of today.
Awesome. And how far are you out of training, and how far is she out of training?
I'm 7 years out of training, and she is 11 months out of training.
Okay. And what's your net worth divided up into at this point?
So most of it is retirement accounts. We have about 500,000 in Roth, 250,000 your traditional 401k, and then we have about another 200,000 in taxable versus a sole 140k that I had from a side gig, some cash, and a little bit into an HSA.
Okay. Any house or practice or anything like that?
Yeah. So we do have a house, and we own about 180,000 of that house. We just bought it last year when we moved. The bank owns the rest, but we do own about 180,000 of the principal.
So, what's been your range of income throughout your career? It sounds like hers dramatically went up in the last year, but it sounds
Yeah.
like for most of the last 7 years, it's been a resident or fellow income for her, and then whatever you were earning. So, where
Yes.
have you guys been at total throughout the last 7 years or so?
So my first attending salary was about $250,000. That was my lowest. And then I did fellowship in ultrasound, and slowly over years used that as a way to have a side business where I review ultrasounds from different hospitals. So as years have gone on, we increased our salary, and the highest we made was $600,000. We're down, actually, believe it or not, only because I've cut back a little bit, even though she's gone from a fellow to an attending. I cut back a lot now that she has attending salary as well, just to have more free time.
Were you guys married or together when you came out of training 7 years ago?
Yes, we were. Yeah, we got married during residency. So we graduated medical school, and then the next year we were married.
Okay, so do you remember what your net worth was when you came out of training?
Yeah, I looked this up. It was actually negative $60,000 when we came out of the training,
Negative 60.
and now
Okay.
we're
All right.
negative $60,000, and now we're millionaires with no student loan debt, which is pretty cool.
So you paid for school with family help, or how would you end up paying for your school?
Yeah, I was very lucky. My parents helped me with the payment for both undergrad and graduate school, and all the loans come from my wife.
Yeah. It looks like that's probably the case for about a quarter of medical students. When you look at the exiting student surveys, about 27% of medical students graduate without debt. Now, I don't know how many of them are counting their HPSP scholarship or an MD PhD or that sort of a contract thing, but I think the majority of those are people whose family was just able to help with the tuition. So it's not that uncommon, but it's definitely a minority. Did your family teach you much about money when you were growing up?
Yeah, so my parents were really good about teaching me to save, to make sure that we have enough money towards retirement. It's funny, when I was in high school and into college, having a little job, my dad would try to encourage me to put some of that towards a Roth IRA. So even at a young age, I was taught to contribute as little bit as possible. Even if it was something, it would still grow over time. And in residency, even though it was a very small percentage, just putting a little bit into a Roth account just to get the habit of saving and contributing towards retirement so it would grow over time.
Any children in your family?
Yeah, we have two kids. We have a 7 and a 4 year old, both girls.
So, how have you balanced being parents with becoming so financially successful?
I think that's really hard. And I've listened to a couple people on your show and other tips and tricks, and it's hard. My youngest is doing a pretty good job, I think, in terms of learning about saving. We bought the book, How the Moon Jar Was Made, and I think that's been helpful to her. The oldest is still a little bit of a challenge just because we're trying to teach her about saving, but in her eyes, saving is a way so that she can spend it on a lot of stuff later. So trying to get her on the habit on how to be a good saver and not want to buy everything that she sees. But we're trying. Still don't have the best solution possible. I wish I knew the exact recipe for that.
It's nice to have a little more income with her becoming an attending, allowing you to cut back a bit.
Yes.
Has that facilitated some more balance in your lives this year as the kids go back to school?
Yeah, we found that with our family, it works well when I am involved with taking care of the kids as much as possible. So when during her fellowship, I was working a lot, and we did have nannies and other ways for childcare, and it worked, but it wasn't ideal. So now that she is making more money, I'm trying to work as many shifts, as little shifts as possible, but still get benefits with my group and to stay, up to date in emergency medicine. But I do like being the house manager, taking care of the kids, and being more the homebody. Our relationship, our house works well when that's the case. And so now that my wife's an attendant and that we did save a fair amount of money while she was in residency, it makes it more easier and it allows us to do that.
So, what advice do you have for those who are, 7 or 10 years behind you? They're coming out of school, getting into training, and they want to be where you're at. They want to be able to knock out their student loans. They want to be able to get public service loan forgiveness. They want to be millionaires a few years out of training. What advice do you have for them?
Well, from the public student loan forgiveness point of view, again, just being diligent on the counts, and it's a long road, but it worked for us, and it is a huge relief, and can't and we feel so lucky that it happened. In terms of getting to the millionaire milestone, with us paying towards retirement accounts first was always very helpful. Some people don't like to budget; that works well for us, and really just being diligent to make sure that you put the money there, and then you believe it or not, some money is left over to spend on vacations if you desire. Can't buy everything, can't send everyone to private school, can't buy the nicest car in the world, but you can have some enjoyment and spend some money as long as you save towards retirement and towards your future goals down the line. And I thought your course was super helpful. File Your Financial Advisor helped me get a good financial plan. And then when we do have extra money, we know what to do with it because it's already outlined and ready for us to go.
Awesome. Well, congratulations to both of you and your financial success. I know she's actually at work right now while we're recording this. One of the benefits of
Right.
being an emergency doc, right? We're here at random weekday hours recording stuff. But
Right.
thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your story. I know a lot of people will find it inspiring and want to do the same thing you've done.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. And thank you for everything you're doing. I really appreciate it.
All right. A lot of lessons to be learned there. First of all, when you're a dual physician couple, you've got a lot of possibilities in your financial life. You've got a huge shovel. Just the fact that one of you comes out at a different time than the other one and can pay for expenses and start building wealth while you're still in training or even pay for part of your schooling, those sorts of things, just gives you all kinds of possibilities when you're married to another high earner or eventual high earner. I found it really interesting that basically as soon as she got out of training, he cut back and is basically functioning as a stay-at-home dad. And so you just have a lot more flexibility and possibility there. I don't know if it's run by the time you hear this, but we addressed this a little bit on the White Coat Investor podcast. And somebody actually wrote in and asked for tips on what to do with a single doc household. It's apparently feeling that uncommon to people that they want me to talk about it, which was easy for me since that's what I was for a long time, first decade of my career, essentially. That was our only income, was my clinical income um, from practicing. But there's a lot of lessons to learn there, combining things like public service loan forgiveness with a good savings rate and, living your best life. Everybody's definition of what financial success looks like is going to be a little bit different. But it's fun to see the success that you guys as white coat investors have had. Our sponsor for today's episode was Set for Life Insurance. They've helped thousands of physicians and professionals with their term life and disability insurance needs. As independent brokers, they work on your behalf to shop around to find the most suitable products at the most cost-effective rate. Because of their volume and exceptional reputation and the relationships they've developed over the years, they have access to special services not available elsewhere in the industry, such as special discounts, priority underwriting handling, and maybe even some exceptions in the underwriting process. So if you need term life or disability insurance, visit setforlifeinsurance.com today. It would help you get set for life. Thanks for joining us again on the Milestones to Millionaire podcast. We'd love to have you on the podcast as well. But until next week, we'll have to see you around the White Coat Investor community on our blog, on our Facebook group, on our forum, and in our subreddit. Keep your head up, shoulders back. You can do this, and we can help. You too can be as financially successful as those who are featured on this podcast. See you next time.
My dad, your host, Dr. Dolly, is a practicing emergency physician, blogger, author, and podcaster. He is not a licensed accountant, attorney, or financial advisor, so this podcast is for your entertainment and information only and should not be considered official, personalized financial advice.